Right, here we are at the end of July 2021 and it's time for another roundup review of what we've been watching over the past month. What is good and what is not so good. Stay tuned to find out more. The first disc we took a look at is Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One. I wasn't going to look at this because I'm not particularly enamoured with CGI, particularly when it's overly used, and my interpretation of this was it was nothing more than a bit of a cartoon using CGI. But Steven Spielberg, of course, adds a bit of something special to every film he does, and this one is no exception. I did find this a little hard to follow, so did my wife, so it's probably best to know a bit about the story before you go into it. It's based on a book by Ernest Cline about a great inventor of video games who's created a virtual reality world known as the Oasis. Ty Sheridan plays Percival and Olivia Cooke plays Artemis. Now, the creator of the video game has left behind some Easter eggs in there, and it's a bit like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The winner of the competition gets to keep the whole lot because he's left it behind and not left it to anyone. So they team up to win this competition and the winner will inherit his fortune and the game. Now, the best thing about this film for us movie lovers is that there are references to just about every big movie that went before in the 80s, and keep a lookout because there's things like a cinema running Schwarzenegger and Jack Slater, which those of you that know Last Action Hero will know that reference, but RoboCop appears, Batman appears, just about everything appears in this film if you look closely enough, and others you don't have to look quite so closely, such as the T-Rex from Jurassic Park and King Kong from King Kong. But the best sequence of all is when they go into a part of the game that's actually The Shining, and it's a very impressive reproduction of The Shining. They did reconstruct parts of the sets in the hotel, particularly the elevator where all the blood comes down, which is quite an iconic moment from The Shining, but it's also rather funny as well. So it's worth looking at this film, if nothing else, just for all these references to the movies. It cost $175 million to make and it grossed $583 million. It runs for 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's a 2.4 to 1 approximately aspect ratio and it comes with Dolby Atmos sound. There were 70mm blow-ups of this film when it was in the cinemas, so I don't know what that would have looked like, but I can imagine it must have looked better than this 4K disc, because it's not the best, so I think they would have had to have done a better job for a 70mm release. Plenty of extras will give you a lot more information about this, and I think after I've watched the extras I have a better appreciation of the film and I respect what the filmmakers were trying to achieve. So in that regard, as a whole package, I'd say this is worth a purchase. Now, the next ones we came to was actually a double disc, this one, but first of all we'll talk about Jurassic World. This was made in 2015 and directed by Colin Trevorrow, and I felt like I'd seen it all before, only with better image quality. Now, it's a fairly predictable film. It's the site of the original Jurassic Park. I've forgotten the name of the island. Was it Island Nublar? It was something like that. Anyway, a new genetically engineered Tyrannosaurus Rex-like hybrid has been created, and it's a cross between a T-Rex and a Velociraptor. So I think we all knew what was going to happen there. Yes, it escapes and it destroys a whole park and a lot of people with it. It stars Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, and they're both terrific in both films, but more so as the films progress they become increasingly important, and also one of the Velociraptors who, as the name of Blue, it seems that these Velociraptors have been trained much like you would train a dog, and they are hyper intelligent, so a bit of genetic engineering has gone on, and this one by the name of Blue, by the end of the second film, he really is something special and you really care for what happens to him. But because of this new creation known as an Indominus Rex, the Velociraptors are turned to try and rescue the situation, and Chris Pratt ventures out with the Velociraptors on his trusty Triumph motorcycle, and I'm so pleased it's a Triumph, and he goes in search of the Indominus Rex to try and save the day. It had a budget of $150 million and it grossed $1.7 billion. It has an aspect ratio of 2.0 to 1 and DTS:X sound. Now, it was filmed on 35mm, but I can't find the exact 35mm format used, and I suspect it was Super 35 because it doesn't really look brilliant. However, there was also some shot in 65mm, so that should look really special, and I really must take another look at this to actually pick out these better sequences. And there was also some video shot at 6K, but all this high resolution imagery didn't seem to work a lot of the time to me and my wife, and we found the dinosaurs particularly hard to discern at times. Yes, it was obvious they were on the screen, but strangely you couldn't really see them, so I really need to take another look at this to see if I can work out what was going on. However, when you find out afterwards that there was a digital intermediate master of only 2.4K, looks like it was low quality CGI, messing up the overall image quality. So in that regard, this first film really was a bit of a disappointment, and the story was all a bit too predictable, but at least it was easy to follow. Now that brings us to the second film, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, released in 2018 and directed by J.A. Bayona. What a difference. This was shot entirely on video at 6.5K and had a digital intermediate master of 3.4K. It looks so much better than Jurassic World. I wasn't able to compare these discs against the Blu-rays because in this 2-disc pack you only get the 4K UHD Blu-ray discs, and on the first film there's no extras on it. On the second film all the extras seem to be on the 4K disc, so you can learn more about how it was made too. And when you look at those extras, if it's not obvious when you watch the film, it's clear to see that everyone involved in this had a really good time making this film. And maybe that's part of the difference, that they really did enjoy working for that director. The basic premise of the story is set 3 years after the first film, and a volcano is about to erupt on the Jurassic Park island and wipe out all the dinosaurs. So cue Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard to mount a rescue, and in particular because Chris wants to save his Velociraptor Blue. But what we're not anticipating is that these surviving dinosaurs are going to be taken back to California, and I think we all know what's going to happen, as they're bound to make a third film. This film had a budget of $170 million and it grossed $1.3 billion, so not as successful as the first film, but still a huge success. It's got DTS:X sound and an approximate aspect ratio of 2.4 to 1. We both felt that this was the better film of the two, even though we also felt that we'd seen it all before, but the big advantage was the image quality and the fact that you could easily discern the dinosaurs on screen. So I can thoroughly recommend the 2-disc set of the Jurassic World films, particularly if you can find it for a good price, as I was pointed to a couple of months ago. The next film is the 2005 James McTeague directed For Vendetta, and this is the Titans of Cult box set, and it really is something rather special. It was sent to me by Keith at Euphoria Pictures. It just arrived in the post with a nice little note from him, and I can't tell you how beautiful this set is, and even though it's certainly not the best 4K disc you're ever going to see, it's pretty good, and what makes it special is this packaging. Now, Keith has been doing some great videos for a long time now, and his most recent one is one of his new series called the Battle of the Box Sets, where he's offering up 2 box sets, and in this latest one it's the Psycho films and the Evil Dead films, and he's asking for viewers' opinions of which box set they feel is the superior box set. And well, I won't tell you my opinion of this latest one, but what I am going to say is the opening of this video has got one of the best gags I think I've ever seen on a video review on YouTube. So I'll leave a link in the description below, and go and have a look, and hopefully it'll give you a good laugh like it gave me. Now, for those of you around the world who don't know what we get up to here in Britain, every November the 5th, we commemorate an event when a group of conspirators attempted to blow up the Houses of Parliament. And one of the conspirators, one of the lead conspirators, was Guy Fawkes, and this film is based on the Guy Fawkes legend. Anyway, it stars Hugo Weaving as the Guy Fawkes character, Natalie Portman as Evie, and John Hurt as the evil, well, he's the Prime Minister figure in this, and in charge of a government that's a bit out of control. It's set in a dystopian future. I think we've seen similar things before, but it's actually served up in this really well. It was shot on Super 35, so 3 perforations high, but a slightly wider image on the 35mm film, and it looks pretty good. Possibly because it's not chock full of CGI and they try to do as much of it practically as they could, and that seems to work. The 4K disc on this is again superior to the Blu-ray, and it's the HDR that really makes the difference. It is a bit grainy in places, but I rather like that because I like to know I'm watching a genuine film. But it was initially released to cinemas as a 2K. However, thankfully in 2020, before this film was released on 4K disc, it was remastered in 4K. So I liked it. I really surprisingly enjoyed this quite a lot. And I think if you can get this Titans of Cult limited edition release, I'd say it's well worth a purchase, because the packaging in this really does enhance the viewing pleasure of the film. Seems to give it a bit of a boost that it maybe wouldn't have so much in the standard packaging. But yes, another one that I'd recommend. It had a budget of $54 million. It grossed $132 million, so not a huge success, but still a success. It runs for 2 hours 12 minutes, has an aspect ratio of 2.4 to 1, and comes with Dolby Atmos sound. We come to the final film in the collection from this past month, and a lot of people asked me to review this, and I did resist for far too long really. It's Mad Max Fury Road, but similarly to Ready Player One, I would say you're better off knowing the basic premise of the plot of this film before you sit down to enjoy it, because my wife and I, we both wonder what on earth we were looking at for the first 15 minutes, and although it's impressive to look at, it was hard to follow and we didn't really know what we were following. So I would say we've got to go into the plot on this a bit before sitting down to enjoy it. Tom Hardy is the actor now playing Mad Max in place of Mel Gibson, of course, and we're joined by Charlize Theron, looking not quite so glamorous in this, so a bit like that fabulous role she had in the movie Monster, but she plays Furiosa, and I think we can expect spin-offs and sequels as a result of this, because you can be sure they're going to make another Mad Max, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Furiosa spin-off. Max is taken prisoner by the usual violent group in his post-apocalyptic future, but he manages to escape when Furiosa makes off with the group's fuel tanker. What we don't know at this point is that she has escaped with the leader of this community's 5 wives. Now, everyone you look at from this community is a mutant of some sort or has clearly got something wrong with them, apart from these 5 wives when you see them. But anyway, she's got them hidden away on this tanker. She heads off in a different direction through the desert, and everyone takes off in pursuit. That's the basic premise. Max joins her, and they're then fighting for their lives. And how does it all end? Well, you'll have to watch to find out. It's an all-action adventure, and they really do set the desert alight. The image quality on this 4K disc is among the best of any movie I've seen that was shot on video. It was shot 2.8K video, and you'll be surprised to learn perhaps that it was a 2K digital intermediate master. So I think it just goes to show how if you get it right on the filming day, it will still shrink down to look great on these discs. And once again, it's HDR that makes the difference between the 4K UHD Blu-ray and the standard Blu-ray. Now, at first glance, you think the Blu-ray is perfect, but then you take another look at the 4K and it's just in a class of its own. The colour is that much better, the density is that much better. It had a budget of $150 million and it grossed $375 million. There is an aspect ratio of 2.4 to 1, a Dolby Atmos soundtrack, which of these 5 films I think is the best of the 5 films, although I have to say they're all fairly exceptional in this group, and it runs for approximately 2 hours. Now, I don't think I can say Mad Max Fury Road is among my favourite films, but once you know the basic premise of the story, I think it is much more enjoyable. And if you're into loud, big screen action adventures, there's probably nothing better. And once again, The CGI in this is minimised. They try to do everything practically, and that meant a lot of these things that you see, you'll think you're looking at something that must have been done in the computer. You're not. Sometimes though, and this is where the two are married perfectly, they've taken a conventional effect and they've either integrated it into other things or they've cleaned it up in a computer, and that really is the best way of using computer effects. So what would be my choice of the best film of this 5? All of them. They're all recommended. Different reasons for each of them, but I'd say give them all a try. And in particular, the Jurassic World, I think you've got to get the 2-disc set, because the first of those films on its own, not particularly brilliant. But anyway, we did another Mondo Mooch yesterday. For those that don't know what a Mondo Mooch is, it's John Perry at Mondo Chelovek Movies. He's always having a mooch around HMV and CEX, so whenever we go to HMV and CEX now, it's a Mondo Mooch. And Mondo himself, he sometimes does what is known as a Mega Mondo Mooch, where he takes in some other shops as well. But anyway, he always comes home with something. But I think we outdid him here, and there were a few films that I had on the list that people have asked me to review that I couldn't get in the shop, so an order's gone into HMV online today, so we'll have even more on the way soon. So I don't know if you can make out what they are on here, but one of them in particular I think people are going to enjoy is the fact that I've finally picked up Dr. Sleep, which I've been avoiding because I didn't want The Shining spoiled for me. And I should say thank you to everyone who commented on that video, The Shining, because I think we've now worked out what the ending was, what went wrong, and why we were left with the ending that we were left with. So anyone who doesn't understand or doesn't fully understand the end of The Shining, I think I now know what it is. Then again, I'm about to watch Dr. Sleep, so now no doubt my thinking on that is going to change. One other minor piece of news is those of you that now to subscribe to Young Teddles down in Australia. No, sorry, I should say Clark Teddles down in Australia. He's just gone and bought himself a Super 8 projector, and he's just got his first Super 8 film. So I hope it's still in good condition, that film, Clark, and you're going to enjoy it. It was one of the first 400-foot reels I ever saw over here in 1978 at Photo World 78, when one of the dealers there was screening via a projector like my UMIG RS3000, which has got an inbuilt screen on it, much like a 14-inch portable television. It's 12 inches across. And they were screening the 400-foot reel of Close Encounters, and I couldn't believe what I was watching at that point. And that's interesting, really, because you look back to that time, and to have anything like that to be able to watch in the home was just unimaginable. And here we are today. How many of us take it for granted? We're able to get all these great films and watch them full length in the home in the most amazing picture and sound quality. So it really does bring it home that Clark has just got this 400-foot reel of Close Encounters. And I'm looking forward to hearing what he's got to say about it. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this video, so if you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and perhaps consider subscribing so I'll be encouraged to create more content like this in the future. Until the next video, bye bye for now.